down that camera and strap in. It's time for a new episode of TogChat Live. It's an open mic night for photographers. Get ready for 60 minutes of your photography questions in real time with answers from your host, Joe Edelman.
Hey gang, welcome to another live episode of TogChat. I'm Joe Edelman, your host for the next 60 minutes of pretty much anything and everything photography. It's an open Q&A tonight, gang, so I am all yours. That means start loading those questions in the chat window, okay? We got a whole hour here to deal with your questions. Few folks got here early. I've already got some questions waiting, so we'll get to those. I wanted to say hi. We got a lot of regulars here. Susan's here. Marcus is here. Melnick's here. Troy, of course, he's here. He's got his Pepsi ready. Casper, James, Linda O, Ian's here. Tom, Ken, there's another Tom. Dan is here. Glad to see you guys here. Once again, thank you so much for spending your Monday evening here with me. I really appreciate it. So let's go ahead and get all the business out of the way so that we have the whole night to talk, okay? So you guys know, number one, that TogChat is being sponsored by Hunt's Photo and Video in New England. I'm not getting paid when I say sponsored. I mean that Gary Farber, who owns Hunt's and is the guy behind it all, has been very supportive to what I'm doing on YouTube and here with TogChat. And honestly, as a favor, I want you guys to know about what Hunt's is doing. I did a video a ways back about a lot of the smaller regional camera store chains and how they compare to B&H Photo and Adorama. And I got to tell you, you're not going to find more knowledge, more hands-on help and assistance than you're going to get at these regional camera stores. And my favorite, it's literally Hunt's. In fact, if you go back and look through the comments in the last couple Talk Chats, you're going to see story after story that people have posted about their experience with Hunt's. They're great. There's a link to them in the description below the video. And if you saw the video that I did about the Savage LEDs, they also have a discount code, which is in the link, or excuse me, in the description below the video if you're interested in purchasing them. Hunt's also has some more discounts coming up for us. My video that's coming out this week, part 2 of the tripod series. I'll be telling you which tripod brand I have chosen to go with. And Hunt's has been kind enough to also offer a discount for a few of their tripods as well. Also, just a reminder, please, it's greatly appreciated if you would take the time to hit that thumbs up and do the like thing. It really does matter. And of course, if you haven't, please subscribe. I'm at about 98,000. I'm like right on the edge of 98,000 subscribers, trying to hit that 100,000 mark by like the first week in December. That's the goal, okay? Of course, social media, you can find me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, the most. And I'm on all the rest of them, Tumblr, Google+, LinkedIn, you name it. I'm on all of them, but those are the ones where you'll find me most often. And then, of course, comments are always appreciated, not just here in the chat window, because remember, that goes away after the live feed is done, but it would be great to have your comments below the video as well. I'll do my best to answer all the questions tonight, but if you've got a question that you that you really need to get answered, make sure that you go ahead and do a super chat. Hit that little $sign down in the bottom left-hand corner of your chat screen, and you can donate anywhere from $1 to $500 if you're really crazy. And I will, if I have to, I'll stay late to get to all the super chats. I promise. So let's take care of a couple things here. There's a bunch of people that have already been asking about honey badgers. So let me bring some of you up to speed. Now, the cool part is, for those of you that are here, I haven't made like a big formal announcement yet, so if you're a member of my Facebook group, you already know about this. And I did just make an announcement tonight via Instagram and over the weekend via Facebook. So the folks at Interfit Photographic, they have been kind enough to bestow me the honor of being named one of their creative pros, or I guess technically it's the Platinum Creative Pros. Great group of people, incredibly talented photographers, and the majority of whom are photographers and educators. So people like myself that are really doing a lot to educate the photographic community and really to help people to be able to improve their photography. And to make the long story short, there's a video that's going to be coming out next week where I will give you a lot more information. So since you guys are here tonight, I'll give you a little bit of the story. And that is, you all remember that video that I did gosh, probably 6 or 7 months ago that was about the Paul C. Buff Digibee, the DB800s. And I said, I love the Digibees. And I do. They're really nice flash units. But here's what happened. After I did that video, I got blasted. And I mean blasted. I take a lot of pride in my research. When I teach you guys, I don't just teach from my experience, and I don't just teach from, basically what's in my head, but I go back and I research stuff to make sure that I'm giving you as much detail and as much information as possible, which, I won't lie, the cool part is that even means that sometimes I'm learning. But I did the Digibee video, and I overlooked a detail that I just took for granted. And that detail was that you can't buy the doggone Buff product outside of the US. So, just like you guys here tonight, I have people that follow me from all over the world, which is one of the coolest things about doing this whole YouTube thing. And so I had a lot of really upset people because here I was talking about this really cool flash, and literally more than half of my subscribers and followers can't buy it. So I was really disappointed in myself. Literally a couple weeks after I made that video, Interfit Photographic made a big announcement about a new flash called the Honey Badger. And Interfit knows, I think the name's a little weird. I told them and I warned them I would say that. But here, let me switch over here and so you guys can see a picture on their website. So this is on the Interfit website. So that's kind of the sexy picture of the Honey Badger. There's the Honey Badger. You'll notice it looks a lot like that Paul C. Buff flash. But here's the cool part. It's a lot better for a whole bunch of reasons. Number one is what you're seeing right there, the price. Number two, in response to the trouble that I got in with my video before, it is available pretty much all around the world. Okay, with a couple restrictions, but much more so than what the Buff units are. So anyway, short story long, long story short, however you want to look at it, I am no longer a Paul C. Buff user. For reasons that extend beyond just this flash unit. And so I'll have a video coming out next week that is going to tell you literally about why I made that decision, why I got rid of all my Paul C. Buff product, and why I have invested in the Interfit system, which one of the great things about the Honey Badger is that it is interchangeable from the standpoints of receivers and transmitters with all of the larger Interfit strobes, the S1, the S1A. So there's a full system that is in play there. And for those of you that, drool over the Pro Photos, the B1s and all those, you might want to look at these Interfit strobes, okay? So stay tuned. You'll learn a lot more about that. But I did kind of a live unboxing in my Facebook group last week when I got the Interfit. So a lot of folks saw that. They knew that I was going to do some shooting over the weekend. I did a shoot this morning with them, and I've also got a shoot scheduled tomorrow with them. All stuff leading up to the video that I'm going to do. So I will report to you, those of you that have asked, what I thought of the Honey Badger so far. Love them. I mean, they are everything I expected. The fact that I can control them all individually by channels and groups from the remote on camera is really, really nice. And while you can do a little bit of that controlling similarly, and I say that loosely, if you buy the more expensive Cyber Commander from Buff and you're using the Digibees, it's nowhere near as convenient. These Honey Badgers, really, really nice. They feature for feature, they're actually just a little bit ahead of what Buff's offering. Ian, thank you so much, man. I really, really appreciate the super chat. And actually, I have a question here from you earlier, Ian, so it's good. I promise I will get to that question. But thank you. I appreciate the support. So yeah, guys, I'm actually thrilled with them. I will definitely be doing some more stuff with Interfit as the year goes on. Some educational stuff for them on their blog and their YouTube channel. Obviously, you'll be seeing the Honey Badgers turn up a lot more in my videos because my studio is now outfitted with the Honey Badgers. So instead of having those little red boxes hanging all around, next time you see a video from my studio, you'll see the yellow boxes hanging all around. But they're great. And if anything, I'm a little ticked off at Interfit that they didn't come out with these about 4 months earlier than what they did, because then I potentially wouldn't have bothered buying the alien bee or the Digibees and then having to sell them off. So, you know, beyond that, everything is advertised, and they're certainly great at that price. I mean, you simply can't beat it. So it's also worth noting, guys, that they come with a 24 by 24 soft box. It's a pop-up soft box. And another cool lesson that I learned, I've never been a fan of those pop-up soft boxes. So for those of you who don't know what that means, it doesn't have a speed ring. It's actually, it basically just kind of like slides over and latches onto the front of the strobe, and it's all pressure. If you would have asked me before I got my hands on one of these and played with it, I would have said, you know, I just don't like that. I'd be afraid they'd fall off, all that kind of stuff. Here's the thing. When I did the live unboxing, I popped one open, put it on the strobe, and literally like shook the strobe. It doesn't come off. It didn't move. So actually really, really impressed with them. So that's the story on the honey badgers. Okay. I see a couple people are asking what's going on with the Olympus stuff. So if you were here last week, I talked a little bit about it. I don't want to spend a whole ton of time tonight talking about me. I want to answer your question. So let's get both of the big changes in Joe's world out of the way quickly, and then let's get to the good stuff. Oh, and by the way, gosh, you know, I forgot. I had kind of a really fun / smart ass welcome that I was going to do to the show tonight, and I completely forgot. When I came on tonight, I was going to say, hi, my name is Joe Edelman, and I shoot RAW and JPEG and really whatever the hell I feel like shooting for whatever reason I feel like shooting, and I really don't care what anybody else decides to shoot when they shoot. If you know what that's about, you're having a laugh right now. If you don't know what's about, you think I'm just an idiot, so don't worry about it. But anyway, the Olympus gear. So that is an EM1 Mark II. There's one of the new 25mm f1.2s, which is, that's the lens that's on the camera. That's the equivalent of a 50mm 1.2. There's 300mm f4, and then the 12 to 100 f4. Those are on loan to me right now from Olympus. They very, very kindly gave me this gear to try out for 2 months. I'm not going to use it for 2 months, just because, you know, I went into this with a pretty good idea of what my intent was. So this is a matter of me being able to kind of affirm that I'm making the right decision or the wrong decision. I'm expecting to return this gear to them probably by the end of this month at the very latest. And so the short piece is, for those of you that are wondering, I am very, very seriously considering giving up my Nikon gear, giving up full frame shooting, giving up APS-C shooting, and going micro four thirds. I have been extremely impressed, I will tell you this much, extremely impressed with the Olympus gear, the outcome of the images that I've shot so far, and I've been doing a little bit of everything from studio work, which I did today and which I did Saturday, to also literally just chasing my grandson around for hours in an afternoon. I've been incredibly impressed with the gear. I love the size. I love the weight. The build of the gear is awesome. Feels solid. Handles really, really well. The ergonomics are great. I was worried about the menu system because I had read a lot of stuff about how bad Olympus's menu system was. Last week in TogChat, somebody explained to me that was the older models, that it's much better in this one, because I actually think the menu system is really easy in this one. So I finally did get to shoot a little bit of video, was very impressed with the video. So I am literally considering, you know, making the move. If I do make the move, obviously I will keep you guys in a loop. I will give you a lot more detail as to why. You know, the short version is I don't have a tremendous amount of confidence in Nikon's future at this point. And I don't mean like they're going to go out of business. They're not going to go out of business. Let's get that clear. I'm not hinting at that. I'm not suggesting that. No. I don't have a lot of confidence in everything I've read about how they appear to be approaching mirrorless. I don't have a lot of confidence in what the size of that camera is going to be, what the cost is going to be. And I'm tired of lugging big, heavy gear. And I'm tired of being lazy with the idea that all those megapixels are actually helping me. I'm a photographer that pays attention to what I do. I'm a photographer that is careful about what I do. And I don't need 15 stops of dynamic range to save my ass because I don't pay attention to exposure and lighting. I don't need all those megapixels to try and hide or mask problems that I'm not taking care of before the shoot. So, you know, I am a photographer who generally shoots in good light. Whether it's outdoors in daylight, whether it's in a studio well lit. So, you know, some of the supposed pitfalls of Micro Four Thirds are really not a factor for me. You know, and ironically, in the course of this exploration for me of looking into these cameras, I have spoken with many photographers that are using Olympus, not just for people like I do, but wildlife photographers, people that are doing landscapes and travel work. They're not having the same problems either. So I'll let you guys know, but it's definitely something that I'm considering very, very seriously. Really, you know, kind of putting this camera through its paces, trying to get myself as familiar with it as possible, and trying to cover as many kind of extremes in my normal work that I would possibly encounter with it. Also making sure that I'm going to be able to, you know, match up all the right gear, all that kind of stuff, because I don't want to have to go out and replace other gear that I have. So yeah, you know, it's that's what's happening. All right, so we got a whole bunch of questions in here. So let me, and I got a couple that came in early. We'll get to all of those. So let's start here. Teresa's got a question. Oh, wait a second. She looks right. No, it's pretty good. Really focused mostly on women. We'll love both men and women, even families. So it looks like we got like a whole bunch of side conversations going on here. All right, guys. So listen, guys, seriously, do me a favor. If you have questions, post them for me. And I'll do my best to answer them. And if you have something else to contribute, but I really want to be able to answer the questions for folks. So if people are out here having side conversations, it's impossible for me to track your questions. Okay, so everybody kind of loses there. All right. So let's see here. Backing up. Harrell, in 10 months. This is an interesting question. This is a question we don't get that often. So I'm moving to Boston area for an internship in dietitian, and I want to be a studio or assistant photographer. What do I need to learn by then to do it? How to connect with other photographers? Well, Harrell, so you're going for an internship as a dietitian, but yet you want to be a studio or assistant photographer. So, I mean, I got to be honest with you. So part of the conflict is, I have a feeling that internship for the dietitian is going to be kind of like a full-time thing, which means that leaves you part-time to assist a photographer. You know, I'm not going to say that there's no photographers that wouldn't like somebody that can show up occasionally in an evening or weekend and do stuff. But generally, if a photographer is going to take on an assistant or an intern, they need to have good availability. And to be honest with you, the best assistants I've ever had knew as much as I did. Right? I do understand that an assistant photographer, you're not there to be taught. You are there to learn. Now, wait, that sounded weird, right? Let's break this down a second. And this is something you should all think about, okay? So if I take on an intern, which I do, 1 to 2 a year, I have interns come in. They are here for the purpose of teaching. So my responsibility in my mind when I accept that intern is that for the 3 months to 6 months that they're going to be working with me, I am going to go out of my way, above and beyond, to teach them. And I will have lengthy discussions with them before they start so that we are both on the same page about why they are coming to work with me. What specifically do they want to learn? More often than not, it's lighting. Okay? That's fine. So when it comes to an assistant, that's a different monster. You know, if you go to the major markets like New York, LA, and you want to become an assistant, you better be an amazing photographer, because the assistants in New York, LA, they're amazing photographers. These are people that just haven't kind of gotten their big break yet, and or haven't gotten to the point where they've got the guts to put out their own shingle. But they're extremely talented. And indeed, a big part of their job is to be able to think whatever that photographer is thinking before they think it or as they think it, which means they have to really understand the process. So an assistant is there to learn, but to learn by observing. to learn by helping, which means they have to be capable of contributing. They have to have knowledge, they have to have depth, and they have to have understanding. So generally, an assistant, unless you're working with an amateur photographer, an assistant, that's a job. Well, the job, you've got to be qualified, which means, bottom line is you need to be almost as good as the photographer. That's what an assistant does. Okay? So that's a great question, and I hope you all kind of got the difference there. An assistant is not a learning position. An assistant is a working, position. So, Irving Carrera, why is the Digibee not as good as the Honey Badger? Well, again, there's a video coming out, but the short version, and you can compare the specs. The short version is less expensive, same power, more f-stop control. In other words, you've got 6 steps on the Digibee, 7 steps on the Honey Badger. The flash tube and LED light are covered. It actually gives you better diffusion. Uses a Bowen's mount, which is more universal. The swivel on the stand mount is ratcheted, which means it's really cool. You can actually loosen the thing all the way, tilt the head forward, and it doesn't fall. So it's never going to drop and bang on you. You actually, even though it's loosened all the way, you would actually have to push it to go down. Okay, so it's a ratcheted stand mount. Just a lot of better design features. Also, the receiver for the interfit transmitters is built in to the Honey Badger with the Alien Bee. In addition to the Alien Bee, or excuse me, the Digibee, in addition to it costing more than a Honey Badger, you've got to purchase the receiver on top of the price. And if you've ever seen the buff receivers, while they work fine, in other words, they work as advertised, they are these little tiny units that sit on top of the light, and they have about 8 super, super, super tiny thin pins. The slightest little bump or bang on that receiver, and it bends, and oftentimes snaps the pins. I've broken, in the 6 months or so that I've had them, I've broken 3 receivers off of my buff strobes because they're super, super easy to break. So that's just a few of the details, but I will get into all of that in the video that's coming up. So let's see here. Sinaz, I thought the point of a full frame sensor was depth of field and less compression compared to a smaller sensor. Not really. No. Sinaz, so let me give you this perspective now, because I don't want to start an all-out debate from the techtographers. So, gang, look, I'm begging you, don't go tech on me. Don't start a whole I know more than the next guy about technology crap, because who cares? Literally, who cares? So, Sinaz, if you're a photographer that your head is not happy until you've got the biggest and best of everything, and you think that's going to make your pictures better, then you believe all that stuff and go buy it. Because, sure, on bench tests and this and that, bigger's better, yada, yada, yada. So what? So what? I can show you finished picture comparisons. What you have to start looking at, gang, and this is my point. Look at where do your pictures go? How are your pictures viewed? 95% of my work, it's viewed on a computer screen. 5% of it, well, okay, we'll go 4%, is viewed in print. Usually no bigger than 8.5 by 11, as in a magazine. 1% of it is printed large, and when I say large, 24 by 36. Okay? So, do I need all that kind of stuff? No, at all. Guys, the conversation that's going on here about posing in YouTube videos and all that stuff, I'm going to ask you guys to please, take it elsewhere. Seriously, okay? And it's a real simple reason. If you want to talk about other YouTube stuff, go to the other YouTube places to talk about it. But I take responsibility for what gets taught here, okay? Thank you. So, anyway, the whole thing about, and see here, this is exactly what we're getting at. Less noise, the crowd factor is about it. Mectasy, that's wrong too. You're all wrong, you're all right. This is the point. So, bear with me, guys, all right? I promise you, if and when I switch to Olympus, I will go into extreme detail why. it is going to terribly disappoint all of the techtographers. Because, yes, you can take all your bench tests about how I'm a full frame user, guy. I've used full frames for forever now, like 10, 15 years since they've been available. Okay? So think about this. Either I've completely lost my mind, or I'm being smart and realizing, no, I don't need full frame to do what I'm doing. I simply don't. So that's really all you got to know. I'm not kidding. That's all you got to know. If you're a techtographer, you want to know all those numbers, and then yes, go buy the full frame. Spend that money, carry that weight, and still take boring pictures. Knock yourself out. I'm going to stick with interesting pictures, save myself the weight, save myself a ton of money, and I'm going to do photography the right way. I'm going to get most of it right in the camera. I'm going to understand how my camera works, understand my camera strengths, understand my camera's weaknesses, and I'm going to be a photographer and solve problems and make pictures, just like I've done pretty much for my whole my whole career, okay? So again, that's not going to be for everybody. I've had a few people tell me this recently, and I won't lie. I mean, on one hand, it boggles my mind. I don't understand the logic. I get that there's logic behind this statement, but maybe it's because I'm older and I learned in a much more traditional way that I don't agree with this logic. It actually hurts me to think this logic. But I actually had someone tell me this about 3 weeks ago, and then I've had a few other people kind of echo these sentiments. And the idea was that, well, this person said, I wish I could be as good as you, but until I am, I'll spend the money for the bigger sensor, for more pixels, for more dynamic range, so that the camera makes me look better than what I am. And I'm not going to lie, just boggles my mind to hear that. Because that's basically like saying, all right, well, you know what? I'm not really that worried about learning photography the right way. I'll just let the camera do the heavy lifting. And if that's kind of it for you, cool, but not for me, guys. So, Casper, can you use a straight bed sheet for a background? You just want to understand, absolutely, iron it. I mean, wrinkles are no fun. Unless, keep in mind, you could have a completely wrinkled background. Like if it was really wrinkled, you could actually use that by lighting across it and getting kind of a texture to it, which is cool. Or if you have it far enough away from your subject, you can use depth of field to make sure that the few wrinkles that are there don't show up. Or if you have enough lights, you can put a light behind the bed sheet and light the background. So yeah, I mean, Casper, believe me, I've used bed sheets before. Bed sheets also make great reflectors. If you need a big reflector to put next to a subject, like you would ultimately like to have like a white wall next to your subject for a huge reflector, but there's no white wall. Or maybe it's a dark wall and the problem is it's just kind of eating all your light and it's not kicking any light back. Bed sheets work great. Okay, so Ezekiel, what's the biggest reflector that I own? You just ordered a 3 foot by 5 foot reflector, but somehow the merchant sent me a 6.5 by 5 foot, which is not very portable. Jose, thank you so much, man, for the super chat. I really appreciate it. Ezekiel, the biggest reflector that I own, I own one of, and I hardly ever use this, but I own it. I own one of the PhotoFlex, gosh, and I'm going to call it the wrong name, which is horrible. It's a PhotoFlex Scrim. So it's 3 feet by 5 feet. And it's basically like a plastic frame that you set up. And then the diffuser sheet has like little elastic corners that you stretch over the frame. It's great for outside because it's super light, which also means you have to, put weights on it on a windy day, but it's really easy to carry, super easy to set up. But that would be the biggest I have, but I hardly ever use one that large. And then if you've seen the video that is my home studio video, you'll also see that there are these big reflector panels, of which are like 7.5 feet tall, that I've built I can set them up in a few different places in the studio. So I do have those, which are homemade. But if you watch that video about my home studio, you'll be able to see those. Okay. Benjamin Sutton, thank you. I would love to get off of the gear here for a little bit. A guy like you to bounce part-time for now, photo business, and a full-time job. You'll be diving into that venture around spring. So, the first thing, Benjamin, is I would say have a clear focus of what kind of your photography you're going to do, especially since you're doing it part-time. Meaning, don't try to be a jack of all trades. We've all heard that phrase, jack of all trades, master of none. So, be like a portrait guy or a senior portrait guy or whatever. Be that guy. That's the first thing. Put together a website. Simple. You don't have to spend a ton of money. Don't go to Squarespace. Everybody's got Squarespace. You don't want to look like everybody. Plus, it's expensive. Go to a company like format.com, format.com. Avoid Wix like the plague. Set up a small, simple website. You don't need 100 pictures, just like I teach new models. 10 to 12 pictures to start. If that's your best work, if you got a little bit more than that, okay, that's great. Then you're going to start getting very active on social media. Make sure you watch the 2 videos that I did about social media for photographers, especially the first one. The first one is actually not at all about social media, even though it's called Social Media for Photographers Part 1. It's really about being social. Trust me, it's the most important video that you'll watch. Watch that video. Start your social media work. And then, when you're ready to do this, go to, depending on where you're at in the world, go potentially to like Google Voice and get a Google Voice phone number that is going to let calls come in and either forward them to your phone or transcribe a voicemail message so that you get an email right away. The most important thing is make sure that you are responding to people's phone calls and emails promptly. So even if you have a day job, on your lunch break or during a break, check those messages and respond right away. So it's okay to schedule your work like in the evenings or the weekends, but up to the point where people first contact you, they don't realize that you're part-time. And you don't want to advertise that you're part-time on your website. That's a bad idea. So you want to make sure that you can respond very, very timely fashion. And, once you've already established the relationship with people you're working with, and then you can certainly tell them, well, look, I only shoot, on the evenings, weekends, whatever. So those would be the first tips that I would give you. So Irving Carrera, the video is in my Facebook group. So if you're not a member of the Facebook group, join the Facebook group. I just put the link in the chat window there, and you will be able to see it. So Cosman, do I think Nikon will be able to make their first mirrorless camera backwards compatible with SLR lenses? I think yes. Everything that we're reading says yes, but, big but, it sounds like what they're going to do is they're going to release a series of mirrorless lenses, which makes sense, but it sounds like you're going to have to use an adapter to work backwards, which potentially means that, if I'm a betting man with Nikon, that means you're going to have to buy that adapter. It's not going to be on, it's not going to be included with the camera. And I'm just not a big fan of adapters. We talked about this a little bit last week. Somebody explained the whole bit about, basically the distance the lenses need to be from the sensor. And I get all that, but my argument is these companies need to be innovative. So don't make me use an adapter. They should be able to basically build that front of the camera so that it will mount a regular lens. When I say regular, an existing lens. And then design their mirrorless lenses with a small enough mount that essentially fits inside that mount and locks in, because that lens needs to be at a closer distance. I don't think that's going to happen. It doesn't seem like that's going to happen at all. So, Marcel, what is the best way to get off transition glass tint that comes dark in sunlight? Oh, you mean like the glasses that get dark? If you're talking about photographing people with glasses like that, sorry, you're screwed. Like, you just can't. They look like sunglasses, period. Yeah, I wear those kind of glasses, and the second I walk outside, they get, very, very dark. So, unfortunately. H&A family photos. I'm not... This is really bad. I do have a Google Voice number that I don't use anymore. I want to say that it's like $10 a year or something, and I'm sure there's somebody here that can probably set me straight on that. Or I know Troy Hall's here. Troy will probably go Google that answer and give us the answer in a second. But it's cheap though. And by the way, there are other services out there as well. But the idea is just you want to have something that you're going to be able to essentially present yourself like a professional. That's really the key. Okay. Let's see here. Irving, you have 2 digibs. Yeah. If you don't have the Cyber Commander, which is over $200, and yeah, I mean, it adds up really quick. This interfit system is everything the Buff system is, and then some, plus it interacts with a bigger system. meaning the S1s, if you ever want to step up to the really heavy duty studio strobes or with the high speed sync and the TTL and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I mean, that's one of the big bonuses with this interface stuff. It's very, very well thought out gear, period. Okay. So let's see here. Finally going back. Brent finally ordered some colored gel sets for the flashes. Oh, cool, man. Yeah, gels are fun. And believe me, the worst part of it is you got to do a lot of experimenting, Brett. Which, I say worse. It's not horrible. But when I say you got to do a lot of experimenting, I mean the possibilities are like endless. So yeah, I mean, definitely, it's definitely a lot of fun as far as that stuff goes. So hey, before I forget, because I did forget, I've been talking about this for a bunch of weeks running now. PhotoFlex runs a contest every week. It's called Share Your Lighting, or hashtag Share Your Lighting Contest. Okay. Quite a few of the weeks in the last couple of months, it has been members from my Facebook group that have won, which is really exciting. In fact, last week's winner is a guy named Clint James, who's down in Houston, Texas. You may not recognize this young man, but this young man was on this season of The Voice. In fact, he just got voted off. We're blaming Clint because he got voted off the night after Clint took these pictures. But anyway, one of the cool things about this little family that I've got going here, gang, is that we first helped Clint with some lighting solutions during one of my Friday night Patreon chats. Every Friday night, my Patreon members log into Zoom and we all do like a face-to-face chat. In other words, we get to talk. We spend what's supposed to be an hour, usually winds up running like 90 minutes to 2 hours. But we spent the Friday night before he shot this kind of helping him plan out the lighting. And then that Sunday, he went and he did the shoot with this guy. And he submitted them for the PhotoFlex contest. And they give away prizes. So Clint won a 12-foot muslin backdrop. I don't know what the prize is this week, but it'll be something. So the deal is you need to have a finished picture. In other words, the shot that we're working on. And a behind-the-scenes shot. Here's the cool part. You don't have to use PhotoFlex gear. How many companies do you know that make equipment, that are trying to promote their equipment, that are going to give you prizes even if you use somebody else's gear? I mean, really? Come on, it's cool. So I will tell you, since I don't know what this week's prize is, some weeks they give away backgrounds, other weeks they give away like big light disc reflectors. So always a cool prize. You email your entries. I will post it in the chat window here that's scrolling by. You send your entries to tellus@promarkbrands.com. You should also visit their Facebook page, which I just put that link in there too. So you've got that to take a look at. Okay. All right. So let's see here. Terry J. See, I knew. I joked about it before. I totally intended to open the show. I completely blew my opening tonight. I got carried away talking to people in the chat room, and I looked at the clock. And I'm like, oh, my God, I've got to start the show. I was totally going to open up with some kind of crazy comment about JPEG and RAW. So Terry J's question is here. There were some interesting conversations over the weekend about RAW versus JPEG. I would love to hear your opinion. Okay. So for those of you that don't know, and I don't know the whole story, actually, we all know Frono's Photo, Jared Polin, has his t-shirts. I shoot RAW. That's his thing. Cool. All right. Apparently last week, Tony Northrup or Tony and Chelsea Northrup, I don't know if it was both of them, one of them, but apparently did a video that the gist of it was, so please cut me a little slack. I haven't seen the video. All right, so I'm getting a lot of my information secondhand, but apparently did a video with the idea that you don't need to shoot RAW all the time, that there are times where it simply makes sense to shoot JPEG. And I don't know what his examples were. Doesn't matter. That's cool. And I will say today, so apparently this escalated or something, or I guess Fro posted a comment on their video, and that got a big debate started. Well, all I know is today, like literally right before dinner, I had just walked my dogs. I came in to sit down and eat, and I happened to open up Twitter, and I followed Tony, Northrup on Twitter, and here he had posted this picture of a T-shirt that basically said, I shoot RAW, and it's like I shoot RAW and sometimes JPEG too, or something like that, and like of course the firestorm of comments and debates followed. So. The bottom line is, okay, so Kevin, I'm going to take you at your word, and I'll phrase my answer around this. Kevin's saying that Tony said that beginners should shoot RAW, but pros can shoot JPEG because they get the lighting right. So here's the thing, guys. All right. Tony is 1,000% correct. But since I didn't see it, the video, I want to make sure that we're being clear on something. So if I follow Kevin's quote, and you guys can see it in the chat right here, Kevin says, beginners should shoot RAW, but pros can. And that's the key word in this sentence. Can shoot JPEG because they get the lighting right. So in fact, here, let me see if I can find this picture really quick while I've got the other screen up here. I want to show you guys a picture that I posted on Facebook last week. So I by no means am I trying to say this had anything to do with what Tony Northrup did. I'm confident it didn't, but it fits right into this conversation. Of course, I need to find out which Facebook profile I posted on. Give me half a second here. But I'll bring this up so we can, okay, here it is. Good. So let me switch my screen over. So let me make an admission to all of you. Now, this is gutsy because this is sacrilege to a lot of people. I didn't start shooting RAW at all until about 2008. I didn't start shooting RAW exclusively until about 2012. Why? Because I never saw the need. Okay? So here's an example of a shot. This was done with a Nikon D200. So this is quite a few years ago. Okay? That's a whopping 10.2 megapixels on an APS-C. Kenneth, thank you for the super chat. I'll get to your question in just a second. So it's a whopping 10.2 megapixels on an APS-C camera, okay, or an APS-C sensor. And I have no problem with this image. I have this image printed in a 16 by 20 as you walk into my studio. It's the first picture that you see when you walk into my studio staring at you. So I routinely see this image nice and big. It's 16 by 20. It's not noisy. It's not grainy. It's just fine. It was shot as a JPEG at a measly 10.2 megapixels. And guys, actually about a third of my portfolio. So if you were to go to my website and look at my beauty shots, about a third of the ones that are there were shot pre-2012. And they're JPEGs. They weren't RAW. But that meant that in camera, in the studio, I got the lighting right and I got the exposure right. Done. I wasn't trying to pull my shadows or pull my highlights out or over that kind of stuff. You know, none of that stuff. It's like I got it right in the camera. So, you know, again, guys, it's this debate that goes on. It's kind of a ridiculous debate. You know, what I've learned and what I accept, there are always going to be people that are more into the tech. There are going to be people that justify what they do based on the numbers. I've got the biggest, I've got the best, I spent the most, so therefore I'm great. Well, not really, okay? You know, and for me, like, I don't want this to sound cocky. I'm hoping, I'm praying that you will understand this in a very practical sense, okay? When I look at another photographer's pictures, there are some photographers, and it's very few, but there are some photographers I look at their work and I drool over it. And I was like, my God, if only I could do that. Okay? The thing of it is those photographers that I'm referring to, and I'm not going to name any names, those photographers that I'm referring to, I actually try to make it a point not to look at too much of their work. Because it's depressing, because I can't do what they do. Beyond that, I don't really care that much about what the next guy does. But that's not about being cocky. It's about understanding why I take pictures. The camera is a license for me. As a young photographer, the camera was my license to witness news firsthand and to record it. Not to watch it on TV later, not to read about it in the paper the day later, to be there, to record it, to experience people, other people, and to be able to step into their world, their lives, at the highest of highs and the lowest of lows, the extremes. The camera was my license to do that. Today, shooting models, shooting portraits, the camera is my license to meet and spend time with interesting people and to have experiences with people and get to know people that I otherwise would never have that opportunity to do. That's why I take pictures. It's not because of the biggest sensor, the most megapixels, the biggest amount of dynamic range. It's not about how many Instagram followers do I have. Yes, I pay attention to numbers on YouTube, especially because that drives my business model. Does not feed my ego. Hell, if it fed my ego, I should have given up a long time ago, because there are people with a hell of a lot more subscribers than me, and there are people with less subscribers than me that are going to pass me real soon because they're growing at a much faster rate. It's not what it's about. I teach on YouTube because it allows me to get teaching gigs. I work with companies like Interfit or Photoflex, not because they're paying me money, because they're not. I do it because it gives me access to interesting gear. It gives me access to companies that have influence. And most importantly, it gives me access to teach. That's how I make my money. It's teaching. Okay. So it all comes down to, understanding what you are shooting and why you're shooting. Craig Pickles, does your phone shoot RAW? If you don't need RAW and won't ever, don't use RAW. So my phone does shoot RAW, and I frequently do shoot RAW on the phone. Now, why? And by the way, I didn't say I stopped shooting RAW like professionally. Admittedly, I do shoot RAW. So that's why I air quoted the word "can" in Kevin's version of what Tony Northrup said. Okay. Could I shoot JPEGs today and get away with it? Sure. Do I like the idea of having the insurance policy of that RAW file in the event that I miss something? Absolutely. I was, again, as I was honest with you, I was slow to adapt that. But a big part of the reason why I do shoot RAW on the phones is because you don't have the kind of range, period, on the phones. The dynamic range, in my opinion, is not that good. Plus, you're working with something that's kind of completely automatic exposure-wise, unless you're going to take a lot of time to very deliberately play with exposure, which is a pain in the butt with the phone. So in that particular situation, I love the RAW. Absolutely love it. Okay. But indeed, when I'm shooting with a phone, I'm not being near the control freak that I am when I'm shooting in a studio. And so that's a big piece of it. So, so let's see here. Let me back up. I got to get a couple super chats in here, guys, really quick. So Kenneth Kelly, I have a home studio with 8-foot ceilings. When I take my son's picture, I get glare in the glasses. I can move the 24-inch octabox to the side where there's no glare, but heavy shadow under the chin. Kenneth, two things. One, you probably need to add a reflector on the other side, or two, potentially go to maybe a bigger modifier where you're putting that. I did a video. Whoops, goodness, there's me talking. Let's stop that. Here, let me switch over. If you go to my YouTube channel, Kenneth, you need to find the little magnifying glass. Oh, really? Let's try this here. There we go. Find the little magnifying glass and type in glasses once you're on the front page of my channel. And that's going to take you to this one right here, how to avoid glare in eyeglasses. And it's going to give you several different solutions that will work through it. So that's where I would start. You can see, like, even in her case, there's a shadow, but it's not a heavy shadow. It's nice and soft. It's, it's not distracting. So Kenneth, I feel like I got off easy on that for your $10. So do me a favor, watch that video. If for some reason you're still not getting the answer or you're confused, promise me you will go to my website, follow up on the contact page, send me a message through there, and I will try to help you work that out. I promise, okay? But watch that video. I think it's going to help you get through a lot of what you're running into, problem-wise there. So, okay. And then let's see. Andrew Russell, yeah, I don't want to go down this path. If you shoot JPEG, the camera edits the image. No, you're not wrong, but let's be careful how we use that word. So again, this is one of the things, unfortunately, and apparently I saw through somebody else's comment that part of the issue with the Tony Northrup video, and I guess what Jared Pullen commented on, was that maybe some of his examples were confusing. That's the problem here. Okay, it's confusing. So unfortunately, if we don't find a consistency in language, then we run into a problem where users at different levels are not necessarily going to understand what's really happening. So, Andrew, the only reason I'm taking exception with your saying that the camera edits the image, let's make sure we understand how, okay? A JPEG is a compressed file. That's all the editing is, gang. All right? So it's applying kind of a set of color standards, and then it's looking for how much information it can remove and still show the image. Hence, a compressed image. So I only picking on that, Andrew, because I cringe when I hear that it edits the image, because it's not editing the image in the sense of changing the colors and all that kind of stuff. It's basically making a mandatory decision based on a set of guidelines and standards of what to keep, what to get rid of, so that it can make a smaller file. Because obviously, even a fine or high quality JPEG coming out of your camera is a much smaller file size than your RAW file. So that's the point there. Interestingly enough, for all of the arguing, so here I'm going to go ahead, and here's the part where I'll weigh in. Okay. For all the damn arguing and bickering and chest pounding and foot stomping about should you shoot RAW, should you shoot, JPEG. Once again, we have these techtographers that always have to find a way to be right. So if the best is RAW, they do that. And then those same techtographers that shoot RAW don't process their images for squat. So what's it matter then? What's it matter that you're shooting RAW and yet you don't process your images? Those are the same people that go into a Facebook group and brag because, here, look at this picture. It's SOOC. That's a badge of honor. SOOC says lazy right there. Big, bold letters. Just plain, simple, dumb, lazy. That's what SOOC is. There's no bragging about that. So the fact of the matter is, if I shoot a JPEG tomorrow, I'm still going to process that JPEG. I'm still going to tweak it ever so slightly, whether it be sharpening, whether it be maybe just a little bit of vibrance boost, maybe it be a little clarity bump. I'm not going to be able to go nearly as aggressive on that JPEG as I would on a RAW file because it's already been processed. But digital files, by design, are meant to be processed. Period. It's just part of what it is. So anyway, that's my take, guys. But that's as far as I will wander into that whole debate there. So yeah, and I see some of you talking about they're just trying to get viewers and this and that. It's certainly a possibility because obviously everybody loves to weigh in on it. It's one of those debates that there's never going to be agreement on. So there you have it. So Casper, how often do I send my camera to the manufacturer for cleaning? Never. However, I will tell you what a lot of people do now. I've just never done it, but it's actually a great thing to do. If you go to any of, depending on where you're at, Casper, if you go to any of the big photo shows like Photo Plus in New York or WPPI in Vegas or Imaging USA, a lot of the companies, not all, a lot, like Canon and Sony, they usually have repair techs there that will do camera cleaning. So you can take one camera and they'll clean it for you. Nikon, if you're an NPS member, you go to the show, you can get your cameras cleaned. So that's actually a really smart thing to do if you participate in those programs. But now, other than that, I do my own, cleaning. So there were a couple questions early on that I want to get to here. Thomas is a little worried that I'm not going to do his question here, so I want to get to that, and I want to get Ian's question in too because Ian did a super chat here for me. So so let me back up here. So Ian had a question early on, and I kind of gave him a hard time about it. So let me try and at least give him something useful here, all right? His question was, he's about to move up to a much more pro setup, okay? His head is saying D850. I don't think that's your head, Ian. I think that's gas. But he's loving what he sees from the GTX 50s. He shoots Sony right now, and he's lukewarm about the experience. And he's asking for any input. So the first thing I'm going to tell you, Ian, and I gave him a hard time because of he basically said, hey, anybody have opinions? I was like, oh, God, that's never a good thing because, of course, there's going to be tons of opinions. So, Ian, the first thing I'm going to say to you that you need to do before you buy that D850 or before you buy that GTX5 OS, whatever that is, what's the GTX50? Is that a Panasonic? What is that? I'm not sure what that is. Anyway, it doesn't matter. The point is, before you buy them, rent them. Okay? I've talked, and I told you guys this last week. I've talked about renting cameras to try them out for a long time now, over a year. I've talked about that it's really a smart thing to do. Last week, if you were here, you knew that the Olympus camera that I had last week was not from Olympus. It was from lensrentals.com. They're not sponsors. I paid for the rental. It's the first time, I'm admitting, it's the first time I ever actually rented it. But here I am considering making a change in camera systems. So yeah, when I was in New York at Photo Plus, I got to handle the Mark II and play with it. It seemed great, but I didn't really get to use it. So I wasn't going to buy a camera just on that one experience with it. Even though I talked to a lot of amazing photographers that gave it, just absolutely incredible reviews, I wanted to try it. I wanted to put it through its paces. And I also wanted to make sure that all my peripheral gear, all my accessories were going to work with it. Because when you have as much gear as I do, you know that inevitably something's not going to work. So indeed, like I'm going to have to purchase a new transmitter for my Luma Pros. Because the current one that I have is a Nikon, one, that kind of stuff. So obviously part of making a switch, I've got to be honest with myself about what is this really going to cost me, right? I'm not going to get these cameras for free. I wish, but no, you don't get them for free. So this is a big move if I do this. So I rented one, and honest to God, it was about as easy as it could be. I mean, literally, you go online, you fill out the information when you want it, when you want to send it back, you pay your money. Lensrentals.com actually shipped it out early, so I paid for a 3-day rental. I actually got a 6-day rental at no extra cost because they shipped it early. It arrived early. They're down in Nashville area, Cordova, Tennessee, which is down near Nashville. So I got the thing for 6 whole days to play with it, no extra cost. It was awesome. The whole setup was awesome and easy, and it allowed me to really, really dig into this camera. And in the meantime, I had contacted the folks at Olympus, and they, Olympus is a company, man. They're doing a lot of smart things, hands down. They're doing a lot of smart things. They're working very hard to get people to pay attention to what you can do with these cameras. So they've been wonderful to work with, extremely helpful, very open, have even given me access to tech people and just really great stuff in terms of being able to get information, which I promise I'm going to share with all of you, whether I make the move or not. I will share everything that I have learned with you guys before it's done. So Ian, the first thing I'm going to say is rent them both, because I will tell you, I see somebody's told me that's a Fuji now. Shows you how much I pay attention to brand names and stuff. Fuji, I've read great things about it, but here's the thing. Limited system in terms of accessories, lenses, and peripherals. So make sure that you really have a sense of where you're going with that camera. That's not a reason not to buy it. It's a reason to make sure that you understand what you're going to need to add to it or want to add to it and what do you want from lenses and what's available. Everything I've heard and read about that Fuji, awesome stuff, okay? I actually thought it was like the XT2 is their new one or that, but like I told you guys, it's like I don't pay attention to that stuff. But you got to pay attention to the peripherals, okay? The D850, beautiful camera, but I got to be honest with you. You're saying you're going to a much more pro setup, Ian. Depending on where you're at now, that could be a massive jump. And so you have to ask the question, do you really need that big a jump? Because I will tell you, you can buy Nikon D810s really cheap right now. And there's not a massive difference between the D810 and the D850 for most photographers. Just because Tony and Chelsea are like having orgasms over this thing doesn't mean that it's the best camera to run out and buy. It is. The D850 is a beautiful camera. I would argue it's probably one of the best cameras that Nikon has ever made. That doesn't mean it's the camera that you need. And so, yeah, so Ian, here's the thing, all right? You're going to do portraits. How big are you going to make those portraits? Because with a D810, I'll go and print that stuff 2 stories tall, no problem. Like, literally. So, just, all I'm saying is, look, be honest with yourself, man. All right? The D850 is a beautiful camera. Has a lot of great features. It definitely has improvements, but you can't take that word improvements and say, oh, well, then I need that. No. You got to look at what are the improvements? What are you actually getting? And do you need those improvements? Do you benefit from them? Because, in all fairness, Ian, what do you see Tony and Chelsea shooting with a D850? Street images and wildlife. You want to shoot portraits. Right? So think that through, man. Okay? So the fact that your head is saying D850, that's gas. The fact that you're looking at a Fuji medium format, if that's what that is, I see somebody saying that, then I would tell you, man, that's a horrible choice because you're going to be extremely limited on peripherals. Extremely limited. So, you know, you better be one damn amazing photographer doing some massive big prints if you need the D850. So, I mean, you guys don't see me rushing out to buy the D850. Even before I thought about making this move to Micro Four Thirds, you didn't hear me talking about running out to get it. Again, you've heard me say every step of the way, it's a great camera. Definitely, probably the greatest digital camera that Nikon has made. But, okay. And as far as Sony goes, you know, Sony stuff's good too, man. But rent them. That's the big thing. Trust me, rent them. I'm really curious, Ian, what camera you're coming from. So, Andrea, thank you for the super chat, man, here. So where are we at here? Sorry for being late. Should I invest for outdoor, high-speed indoor California Micro Mini? Oh, for the way it operates, or get a better boom for my Walmart reflector? Would be good with a super clamp, work with it. Well, so here's the thing. The California Sun Bounces, I actually own one of their minis. Here's the problem. So I'm not going to lie. That I bought that. I bought the Sunbounce Mini in a moment of succumbing to gas. It's a very nice reflector. Super, super lightweight. Folds up in a nice little bag that you can carry really, really easy. But ridiculously expensive. So, Andre, if you can afford it, sure, go for it. I mean, it's cool. But it's not going to be any better than using a Walmart reflector, or for that matter, even using a collapsible one. Because I realize, like, if you're doing a lot of stuff on location, you might not want to carry the Walmart reflectors only because they're big and it's like carrying a sail. Whereas if you get a collapsible, you know, it folds up and it's, you know, you tuck it in a bag or in a pocket even. So those are kind of the things to consider. But I will say, at least from a quality standpoint, the Micro Minis are great. Be forewarned, the material on the California Sun Bounces, it damages easily. Okay, so I would at least, you know, make sure that you're being honest with yourself. You're a person that really, like, looks after your gear and is going to, you know, handle it with care. I would not want to put that California Sun Bounce through a lot of wear and tear on the material. So that is one factor there. Ian, you're coming from an A7R. So, yeah, I mean, you know, part of what you got to look at, Ian, it depends on how much glass you have in Sony. If you've got a lot of Sony glass, I don't know why you wouldn't stick with Sony. Again, I don't hate Sony. I got nothing against Sony. They make... Sony's doing a lot of things right, guys. I just, you know, you guys hear me rail against the fanboy culture with Sony, okay? Because it's just a shame to see people throw money away like that. But Sony's doing great stuff. So, yeah, you know. Life's beautiful. Jason Lanier always says, find the right gear that works for you. And that's very true. I mean, you've always got to, especially when you're looking at changing cameras, you've always got to look at what's available. That's actually, the camera's the basic piece. The camera's like the central core of what you're using. It's the central core of your system. Not just your system when we're talking lenses, but your system when we're talking flashes, all these accessories, everything down to like remote controls, you name it, okay? The camera's just the core of that system. So when you're looking at making big changes, like, you know, Ian's looking at maybe going from, you know, his Sony A7R to a D850 or a medium format Fuji, you have to look at the peripherals. Otherwise, you're just setting yourself up to spend a ton of money. But I would definitely say, Ian, if you're a current Sony user, make sure, you know, you say you're lukewarm, make sure you got a real good reason why you're not liking what Sony's doing, because I actually think Sony's doing a lot of really great stuff. That doesn't mean jump all the way up to the A7R III or the A7 IV. It means buy the camera that's going to do what you need it to do. That's the key. Having the biggest and the best is the answer. I mean, you guys got to understand, all these people that run out and you know, have to buy the biggest and the best, like this Sony fanboy culture they talk about, you're all being duped by the camera manufacturer. You know, having the latest and greatest does not make you a better photographer. It just doesn't. You know, the only reason for properly upgrading to those new cameras is because the new camera comes out and that new camera has solved the problem for you. If it solved the problem, spend the money. If it hasn't solved the problem, don't spend the money, because it's not making your photography any better. You know, it's just that simple. All right, another question we had here. Let me back up. So that was Honey Badgers, talked about that. Let's see. Thomas Palmer, this was the other question he had. So let me get to this one because Thomas asked nicely and he asked me to talk about this week. How do you get your work into galleries? So let me start by saying, number one, I've never done a gallery exhibit. I am hoping to do a gallery exhibit actually in the next year, but I'm trying to work out the details with the gallery that is considering exhibit because, you know me, I want to do something a little bit different. I don't want my images hanging on the wall. In fact, I don't even want to print my images. I want to build like this kind of a TP structure in the middle of the big gallery space and load that structure with projectors all the way up and project the images all around the room so that it's kind of an immersive experience. You can walk into the room and basically stand anywhere in the room and eventually see all of the images. That's what I would like to do. But anyway, that said, how do you get your stuff into galleries? Honestly, the first thing I would advise, so I'm not an expert on this, let's be very clear, but Thomas, what I would encourage you to do is, number one, I would suggest that you literally walk into a gallery or two. Start local, like in your hometown kind of thing. And simply just say, hi, what's it take to get my pictures in here? And ask. Because here's the one thing I can tell you for sure. Galleries tend to specialize a little bit. So now we're not talking like a museum or anything, right? We're talking about galleries. So that means that they need to be able to sell stuff. So part of getting your work into a gallery is the gallery owner is going to look at those images and see, can I sell these or not? Do I have people that will routinely come to my gallery that are going to be interested in buying these? You know, and also, let's face it, a part of what they're looking at is like, is this crap or is this pretty cool, right? Okay, if they think it's crap, doesn't matter what you think, okay? So you know, from their business, if you put yourself in their shoes, those are two things that are important. You know, do they like what they're seeing, and do they feel that they have a clientele that's going to purchase it? So that being said, a gallery isn't a gallery isn't a gallery. They're all going to be a little bit different depending on where they're located, depending on their clientele, depending on the kind of stuff that they're known for showing. Because a lot of it is, you know, certain galleries are known for showing certain kinds of work. So I would start, Thomas, literally by forget the internet and walk into a gallery. If there's a gallery near where you live, walk into a gallery, talk to the gallery owner. Say, hey, what would it take for me to be able to exhibit my stuff in here? And see what they tell you. And basically start to do your research that way. So I'm not trying to dodge the question, but I don't want to give you any more information that I can confidently tell you. But I will promise you that, you know, understand a gallery is not just a gallery. Each gallery is different. Each gallery has different clientele, has different types of things that they routinely sell and are known for. So part of getting into a gallery is finding a gallery that's the right fit in that sense. But one of the best things about walking into galleries, and, you know, take some images on your phone or put them on an iPad, better yet, if you have an iPad so they can see them bigger, to show them. You know, don't just walk in and say, hey, I'd like to exhibit. What's it take? Walk in and show them some stuff. Because for all you know, they're going to look at your stuff and say, oh my God, like, how soon can you get in here? That's awesome. All right. But do understand, they also might look at your stuff and say, who are you kidding? You think somebody's going to buy that crap? Right? So, I mean, it's part of the process, but, you know, that's where I would start. So, let's see. Thomas, plan a marathon in Paris. Hey, you know, if you're going to start at the top. There you go, man. Okay. Let's see here. So, all right, I had a couple more over here. Let me get these. Benjamin asked about the honey badgers. We talked about that. Where'd it go? There it is. Sorry. Geraldo asked, what do you guys think about super zooms? If the sensor size and megapixel don't matter that much, then why do people have a disdain for super zooms that make RAW? Is it lens cloud? Okay, so I don't have a disdain. So I'm going to pause. You ready? I'm not a gear person. I have never heard the phrase super zoom before. So now you can all think I'm clueless. If it's gear, I'm clueless. I didn't know what that GTX 50 thing was, man. I could care less, okay? So I am going to assume, keyword there, assume, that kit lenses fall into this. Like even, this Olympus. This is a 12 to 100, which is the equivalent of a 24 to 200 millimeter lens. Like, to me, that is just an insane range. So I'm going to assume that, Geraldo, that this is what you're talking about, like super zoom, okay? So I'll be completely honest with you. So again, these are 3 lenses that Olympus picked out for me. I didn't get to pick them. They basically said, here's the bag, right? And there's 3 lenses in it, okay? This is a lens that traditionally I would never have considered buying at all, okay? A lens that goes from, again, in full frame comparison, 24 millimeter to 200 millimeter, like, to me, that's just crazy. But this is the lens that I've been shooting with for the last week, with the exception of the 25 millimeter, which is their 50 millimeter equivalent, f1.2, which is a really nice lens. But this lens is awesome. Like, I mean, seriously, it's awesome. If I make the switch, I probably will not buy this because they have a similar lens, not quite this extreme a range, but they have other lenses that are in the 2.8 range. And I've always liked the 2.8 lenses. So I will probably go with the 2.8 lenses. So it's not quite as long a range as this. But, it's one of those things, Geraldo, that if we go to the bench tests and we look at the hard numbers, primes or the not super zooms, in other words, the zooms that are shorter range, like a 24 to 70 or an 80 to 200, they tend to be a little bit sharper, and they're almost always faster. In other words, they have a wider aperture to work with. So again, you have people that have to have the biggest, best, fastest, etc. That's just their MO. Otherwise, they're not happy. So I think that's honestly a big part of why. Now, to be fair, depending on the camera manufacturer, there are some kit lenses that are basically not only plastic casings, but plastic insides. So they're not super durable, meaning they're not going to hold up really well. So that's a consideration. So I would recommend that, don't worry about the super zoom, but it's worth, if you're looking to buy one, it's worth looking into seeing how is that lens actually built, what's it made from, how do the optics work, how many groups, how many actual pieces of lens are there inside. That's all stuff that can kind of go wrong along the way. So I think it's worth looking into that, so you at least can know what you're getting into there and how durable is the lens going to be. It's kind of like that Tokina 100 millimeter I talk about. Now that's certainly not a super zoom, but it's a lens that's below $400 in cost. It's a 100 millimeter 2.8 macro lens. It's less than $400. And that lens is like one of the most amazing. In fact, if I switch to Olympus, I will miss that lens. I will really miss that lens. And, part of the irony of it is, for as inexpensive as it is, meaning you would think it's cheap, it's actually all brass as far as the whole lens tunnel and the mounts and everything else. It's beautiful lens, and it's really, really old school design. So that's also the beauty of it. So shells, is a Canon L lens great on a crop sensor and will show difference? I have no idea. So I'm not even going to try and answer it. Seriously, not to be short, I don't know. I'm not a Canon user. I don't know enough about that stuff. My honest advice to you would be Google that, and you're probably going to find that answer really quickly and really easily. But I have no idea. Hope you like pics. Thank you. How's Wisconsin doing other than really cold right now, I'm sure, right? Actually, LVRR guy, that's actually a good answer. Like, county libraries show local artists every month. A lot of public libraries do stuff like that. Like, so Thomas, that can be like a way to kind of, dip your toe in the water. But I promise you, Thomas, the one thing about that, part of the reason why I avoided going into too many specifics, it varies dramatically regionally. So literally just look to see where people are displaying art in your area and go walk in and talk to people. And you're going to get your answers pretty quickly. If your work is good and your work is worth displaying, those people, they'll want to talk to you. So like I said, take a phone, better yet, take an iPad or small laptop so you can show people samples of your work and get a sense of whether or not they have an interest. Okay. So one other question we had, actually also from Thomas. Thomas was busy before he started tonight. What do you think about f-stoppers and RGG edu formations, if I ever saw them in the same as workshops and stuff like that? I've never done either of theirs, okay? I'm not going to speak specifically to theirs. I do know that the guys at f-stoppers are top-notch. that doesn't mean they're great teachers. I can't speak to it factually. I just know that the guys behind S-Stoppers are good guys. They really put a lot of effort into what they do. They're trying to make a difference in the community. As far as the online learning stuff, I think you have to be really careful, period. And you're also going to find online learning is going to change a lot. I kind of tipped my hand about this earlier this year, and I had to push it back a little bit, but I'm glad I did, because I was this close to like rushing it out the door and starting it early, but I pushed it back to do a little bit more testing. After the first of the year, I'm going to be doing workshops online, but live. So not webinars. Workshops. So let's say you're a portrait shooter, and let's say you do all your shooting in your living room. You will attend this workshop via a webcam and audio, but from your living room with your lights and your background set up. In fact, if you're smart, you will bring in a subject, or at a minimum, you'll have a mannequin there. I will teach, depending on the workshop, could be lighting, could be posing, whatever. I will teach that. You will watch it via video, live, in real time, be able to ask questions, interact with me, and then you'll turn around and you'll do it while I watch. These will be small group instructional things with 5-10 people max attending, but the idea being you're not just going to watch me, you're going to watch me and then you're going to do it and get feedback in real time, not only from myself, but from other attendees. So, you're going to see a lot more of this kind of education coming because the technology supports it now. It's all a matter of seeing where they go. Here's the thing about learning opportunities in general. It's just like all this debate tonight. Well, Tony said this, Fro said this, Joe says this, Jason says that. You have to find the people that you can connect with. Some people connect with me. Others connect with Jason Lanier. That's cool. Others connect with Fro. You got to find the people that you like the way they teach, that you are able to understand and make a connection with, and that's who you follow. That's who you choose to learn from. Is it good to get input from a lot of different places? It is. But I still argue the point, and I'm the only YouTuber that you'll ever hear say this, YouTube photographer. Many of you spend way too much time on YouTube. I am thrilled and honored that you guys spend as much time watching my videos and doing my live streams with me. Believe me, I'd be in trouble if you didn't, right? But I wish every last one of you, I could get you to spend more time each week with the camera in your hand, taking pictures, not thinking about it, not reading about it, not watching a video about it on YouTube, doing it. And again, as I've explained many, many times before, as much as I love this technology and I love YouTube and I love the fact that people like the way I teach, I'm kind of glad that when I learned photography, I pretty much most of the time had an audience of one. My work was usually seen by one person and one person only, me. And I didn't have 50 sources for information. I had a library with really boring books. And I found mentors that I could interact with one-on-one that were local, who were gracious enough to give me time. But they weren't mentors that kind of got on a soapbox and said, you need to do this, this, and this. They were mentors that would tell you to go do something, and you go do it. And then afterwards, they tell you if you sucked or not. Okay? And along the way, they would give you little interesting, tidbits of information. So that's kind of where that came from. So literally, Thomas, if you've tried them out and you enjoy what they teach and the way they teach it, I would say they're probably great. I really don't think for any reason that either of them would be presenting like incorrect information or information that's going to throw you astray. It's really about, who can you, connect with. So, let's see, Thomas Palmer, because they just released a Tasty Business Workshop. Yeah, and, I never really taught business, but I did do the marketing TogChats, Thomas. Part of the problem with that is people weren't showing up. So here's the irony of it. People will go spend money for, a program at S-Stoppers where, they could have got it for free for me, but people weren't showing up for that. So, at the end of the day, that's cool, but I am what I am. There are many schools, but for street photographers, the focal length tells us something also about the concept of photographers. Your favorite lens for reportage. Well, so I don't do much street photography. In fact, I don't really do any street photography, for being honest. But I will tell you, when I was a photojournalist, my go-to first choice lens, anytime I was able to get reasonably close to a subject. So obviously, if it was something that was way off in the distance, that's a different story. But my go-to lens, 24 millimeter. The reason I love 24 millimeter is in order to fill the frame. As a newspaper photographer, you got to fill the frame. You got to fill the frame. You got to get your subject big, right? It's not about showing a cool setting. It's about get in there on what's happening so that the viewer, when they see the newspaper and see that picture in the newspaper, small, can understand this is what's happening. So one of the first big lessons that a newspaper photographer gets beat into their head is fill the frame. So for me, what I loved is the 24 millimeter forced me to get really close. And by getting really close with that 24 millimeter to fill the frame, when you look at the picture, you felt like you were there. That perspective brings the viewer into the scene, and it gives the viewer almost a sense of experiencing it firsthand with me, because I had to literally insert myself into the scene to take the pictures that way. So that would have been my answer. In that scenario, definitely a 24 millimeter. Loved that lens. Love it, love it, love it. And still, even when I shoot like stuff with my grandson, just playing and having fun, and I chase him around, I always go with like the 24. I go nice and wide and get it close. And I'll put him in the middle of the frame 90% of the time when I'm doing that, so that I'm not, getting tons of distortion. But when I look at the pictures, and I look back at my memories of this time chasing him around, whatever, it's like I'm right there with him because I'm that close. That's the perspective that I'm getting. So that's, big part of what I love. Yeah, 24 millimeter is just absolute favorite lenses. I love them. So Jim Kassler, if I ever used, and let me try and I'll get two more questions in here because I ran over time. Shocker, right? Have I ever used any photo deox gear? So what did you think? I see them selling an 80-inch 80 inches, man. So first of all, anything that's $400, so if that's like a parabolic reflector you're talking about, or like a parabolic umbrella for $400, I'm sorry, Jim. I think that's just dumbass to spend that much money. I know, but like $400 for like what? Like I actually just bought recently. I bought an 80-inch angler umbrella, okay, for well under $100. And the anglers, if you don't know them, they're rectangular umbrellas, so they look like a parasail parachute, which is great for low ceilings. I'm going to be doing a video on one. I pay cash for it. I didn't get it handed to me. I bought it. But there have got to be 80-inch solutions out there that are less than $400. So you got to be asking yourself, honestly, Jim, how often are you going to use that 80-inch thing? And ironically, like, you're going to spend $400 for an 80-inch modifier for, your words, some portrait work. Jim, I'm sorry, man. If I'm going to spend $400 for a modifier, I'm going to be using that for a hell of a lot more than some. So, well, yeah, Jim, have you ever seen any of my videos where I talk about the bronze colors? Did you see the video? Here, Jim, come on. You don't want to ask me a question like that, Jim. My God, look. Jim, go back here. Let me switch the screen. Okay, just enough said about bronze color. I'm not in the mood to trash bronze color tonight. Go watch this video about DIY strip light modifiers. Okay, so that's all I got to say. Go watch that video and you'll see what I think about bronze color and all that stuff. But here's the thing, Jim, and I hope I'm not insulting you hardly when I say this, but the only thing dumber than the cost of bronze color is the people that buy it. Period. Sorry. And I know I've just insulted a bunch of people, but look, okay, unless you are doing seriously high-end work, in which case you don't actually need to buy it, you rent it when you need it. Like, why would you spend that kind of money? Makes no sense. So to spend $400 for, a parabolic reflector, I'm sorry, that's stupid. I'm willing to bet now without looking. Somebody can go look. Adorama probably has one by Glow that's like, $1,000. Brent Drafts, Carl Taylor rocks the bronze colors. Why? Because Carl Taylor's an amazing photographer. Come on, guys. Like, really? Like, that's your response? Any good photographer could rock any light. And Carl Taylor's an excellent photographer. And he's sponsored by bronze color, which means he's not paying full tilt for them. So, come on. Are we really that dumb? Seriously, guys. Like, yeah, I'm sorry, but, you're going to ask me dumb questions. That's a dumb question, period. $400 for a lighting modifier is ridiculous. Okay. Great guitars. Nikon's not going to abandon support for the D750. Not while that camera's still functional. Yeah, you'll be fine. Don't worry. Nikon's not going out of business, guys. Just because I'm thinking about changing, Nikon's not going out of business. Nikon's going to be around for a long, long time. Nikon will have mirrorless. They will probably have mirrorless well before Canon. It's all good. It's all good. And it's going to be full frame mirrorless. We know that. Okay. It's, you know, my whole thing with this Olympus move, it's much, much bigger than just a brand name. Yes, I have concerns about what Nikon's doing, but it's got nothing to do with their viability as a business. Not at all. So, Jim, no, you got off lucky tonight. That was the short rant. Okay. So last question here, guys. Sean Irwin, I know you had a video on the Savage LED Edge-Lit Pros, but would you recommend these as a first studio light? I'm thinking about making a home studio after watching all your videos. Yeah, I mean, so Sean, I loved those lights. I'm not going to lie to you. I had so much fun doing that whole LED series. It was really nice to get back to basics and be working with light that you're seeing it all the time and you see every little nuance of it. Loved it. But I want to make sure that I don't mislead you. So there's a couple things you got to think about before you make a decision to start there. Okay. Try and imagine your photography 5 years from now. All right. So to answer your question the way you asked, are the LED lights a great first studio setup? Absolutely. And especially if you haven't done a lot of portrait lighting or that yet, they're an excellent way to learn. Okay. They are bicolor. They're fully adjustable. So really sweet. That means, you know, even if you go out and do portraits on location and you've got mostly tungsten lighting, you can balance your light with it. Awesome. So that being said, look at where you're planning to be 5 years down the road, though, with all of your shooting technology and that. As far as, are you committed to wanting to shoot strobes? And the reason I say that is if you're committed to wanting to shoot strobe 5 years down the road, depending on your budget, you might want to look at something like the Honey Badger. The Honey Badger would actually be a great solution because you could purchase a Honey Badger now for $299 and per light. And if you're new to portrait lighting, simply don't use the flash to start. Use the LED lights. Start adding some modifiers because the modifiers you add now will be the same modifiers you use for the strobe. And then as you get more comfortable, start turning the strobes on. So that's kind of the bonus there. In terms of the ratios, with a 60-watt LED light, that's a much brighter modeling light than most studio strobes have in comparison with the flash power. So, you know, literally they're designed that you could use those strictly as LED lights. So that might be another thing for you, you know, to consider. And some people are going to, you know, I see here Charles is saying I outgrew continuous lights within 2 years. I would say that's a shame, Charles. I regret that if you would have talked to me 2 years ago, I would have said that I outgrew continuous lights. And when I did this LED series, I realized how much I regret that was my philosophy. My advice is don't ever outgrow them, but certainly progress to a point where you realize there are things that you're going to want the strobes for. Shooting portraits with strobes is not a badge of honor. Shooting portraits with strobes does not make you professional compared to amateur. No. Your clients never care how you shoot the portraits. They don't care if you shoot it with Olympus. God, they don't even care if you shoot Pentax. They're fine with that, okay? They care about the outcome of the picture. That's all. So don't fall into that trap of saying, well, strobes are the professional thing to do. No, they're not, okay? Good images are the professional thing to do. How you get them, it doesn't matter. Simply doesn't matter. So, Casper, take your fluorescent lights on location. Yeah, you could try, but man, that's a nightmare. So, all right, gang, listen, I am going to run. Jim, thank you so much, man. I appreciate the kind words. Thank you all again for spending a Monday night with me. 2 videos coming out this week, one midweek, one the end of the week. So the tripod one, which is actually a few days late. I know. Sorry, but it's coming. And then the Honey Badger video will be out to tell you guys the whole Honey Badger story and everything that I'm thinking, you know, about the comparison and why I made the switch. because as I mentioned, it wasn't just the feature set. Part of it was the fact that you can't get these things outside the country, the Digibees. The honey badgers are available pretty much everywhere, but there's a series of reasons. I'm going to tell you guys all that. And of course, we'll be back next Monday with another TogChat. So please, guys, I was really serious when I said that before. I love that you watch me. I love that you take this time, but please be honest with yourselves. Spend more time with a camera in your hand than you spend on YouTube. I appreciate your support. I really, really do. But I'm doing all this for nothing if you guys don't get off the computer and go take pictures. All right? So, whatever you do, thanks again. Remember these words. Thanks for watching another live episode of TogChat. Now go pick up that camera and shoot something, because your best shot, it's your next shot. So keep learning, keep thinking, and keep shooting. Adios.